3 men in tactical vests stood over a 60-year-old man in seat 1A. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't belligerent, he was simply sitting in a seat he had paid $12,000 for. But within minutes, blood would be on the armrest, a smartphone camera would be rolling, and the CEO of a major global airline would be waking up to a notification that his net worth had dropped by $4 billion. History is filled with expensive mistakes. But what happened on Flight 909 wasn't just a mistake. It was a war declared on the wrong man. And he was about to end it. Rain lashed against the reinforced glass of JFK's terminal, blurring the lights of the tarmac into smears of neon red and white. Inside the exclusive Obsidian lounge, the air smelled of espresso and expensive leather, a sharp contrast to the chaotic humidity of the general boarding gate outside. Solomon Bishop sat in the corner of the lounge, far away from the buffet and the bar. To the casual observer, Solomon looked like a man who had wandered into the wrong room. He wore a faded charcoal hoodie, loose-fitting denim that had seen better days, and a pair of scuffed sneakers that were older than the barista serving champagne near the entrance. He had a greying beard, cropped close, and weary eyes that watched the departure board with the intensity of a hawk scanning a field. He did not look like a man who owned the building they were sitting in. He did not look like the silent majority shareholder of the tech conglomerate that supplied the avionics for the very plane waiting at Gate B12. He just looked like an old, tired man trying to get home to Zurich. Final boarding call for AeroVantage Flight 909 to Zurich, the PA system announced, the voice silky and robotic. First class and Diamond Medallion members, please proceed to the gate. Solomon adjusted his glasses, picked up his battered leather rucksack, and moved toward the gate. He bypassed the long line of economy passengers, many of whom cast judgmental glances at his attire, and walked up to the priority lane. Standing at the podium was Linda Halloway. Linda had been with AeroVantage for 20 years, a tenure that had calcified her patience into a brittle, sharp-edged weapon. She wore her uniform like armor, her scarf tied with geometric precision, her lipstick a shade of aggressive crimson. She watched Solomon approach with a look that wasn't quite disgust, but certainly wasn't a welcome. Solomon placed his phone on the scanner. It beeped green. Linda didn't look at the screen. She looked at his shoes. "Sir, this line is for first class and Diamond members only. Economy boarding is Group 4, which hasn't been called yet." "I know," Solomon said. His voice was deep, a low rumble that barely carried over the noise of the terminal. "I'm in 1A." Linda let out a short, sharp breath, a laugh stifled by professional obligation. She finally looked at the screen. The name AS. Bishop flashed in gold letters against a black background. The code Titanium VIP sat in the corner, a status so rare that most gate agents only saw it in training manuals. Her eyes narrowed. System glitch, she thought. It had to be, or an upgrade error. Men who dressed like him didn't buy full-fare international first class. They used miles, or they were employees of the airline flying non-rev, or they were lucky upgrades. "Passport," she demanded, extending a hand without looking him in the eye. Solomon handed it over. She flipped it open, scanning the photo and the data page. Everything matched. She handed it back with a tightness in her jaw. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Bishop," she said, the words tasting like vinegar. Solomon nodded, took his passport, and walked down the jet bridge. He didn't care about her attitude. He didn't care about the optics. He had just spent 48 hours in a basement server room in New Jersey, fixing a catastrophic logic failure in a banking algorithm that could have wiped out the retirement funds of half the tri-state area. He was exhausted. He just wanted to sleep. He boarded the Boeing 787 and turned left. The first-class cabin was a sanctuary of soft lighting and beige leather. He found seat 1A, a window suite that offered total privacy. He stowed his rucksack, sat down, and immediately reclined the seat. He declined the pre-flight champagne offered by a younger, more polite flight attendant named Sarah. "Just water." "Please," Solomon said, closing his eyes. "And if possible, I'd like not to be disturbed until breakfast service." "Of course. Mr. Bishop," Sarah said, placing a crystal glass of water on his side table and dimming the suite's lights. Solomon drifted off almost immediately. The hum of the APU was a lullaby. He was asleep before the plane even pushed back from the gate. He didn't see the commotion at the front of the plane 10 minutes later. He didn't see the station manager, a sweating man named Auden Clark, nephew of the CEO, storm onto the plane with a clipboard and a frantic expression, and he didn't hear the conversation that would seal the fate of AeroVantage. Auden Clark stood in the galley, his face flushed. He was 32, wore a suit that cost more than a Honda Civic, and possessed the nervous energy of a man who was used to failing upwards. "I don't care how full it is." "Linda," Auden hissed, checking his watch. "Chadwick needs a seat. He has to get to Zurich for the summit. If he misses this flight, my uncle will have my head on a pike. Literally." Chadwick was Auden's cousin, the son of AeroVantage CEO Robert Clark. Chadwick was 24, an influencer with zero corporate responsibility, but unlimited corporate access. He was currently standing on the jet bridge, live streaming to his followers, complaining about the unacceptable delay. Linda tapped furiously on her tablet. "Auden, we are fully booked. First is full. Business is full. I can put him in Economy Plus, but he is not sitting in economy," Auden snapped. "He's a clerk. Look at the manifest. Find me a non-revenue passenger. Find me an upgrade. Bump someone." Linda scrolled through the first-class manifest. "We have no upgrades. Everyone is full fare. We have 2 global services members, 3 celebrities, and..." She paused at 1A. "And what?" Auden peered over her shoulder. "Seat 1A. Solomon Bishop. Booked 2 hours ago. One-way ticket." Auden frowned. "Who is he?" "Name doesn't ring a bell. No corporate affiliation listed. None visible here. Just a titanium status. But that can be bought if you have enough credit card points these days." Linda lied, rationalizing her own bias. "He looks rough. Jeans, hoodie. He was asleep before I even closed the overhead bin. Probably a tech freelancer or some lottery winner blowing cash." Auden looked at the live feed of the cabin on the galley screen. He saw the sleeping figure in 1A, the hood pulled up over his head. It looked unkempt. It looked unimportant. "Bump him," Auden said. "He's already seated. Auden, he's asleep." "I said bump him." Auden's voice rose, cracking slightly. "Issue him a refund voucher for double the ticket price and put him on the next flight out tomorrow morning. Tell him it's a federal marshal requirement. Tell him the seat is broken. I don't care. Get him off the plane so Chadwick can sit down." Linda hesitated. She knew the rules. You don't involuntarily deboard a seated passenger in first class unless they are a threat. But Auden Clark was the station manager, and his uncle was the CEO. Her pension, her seniority, her life was tied to this airline. "Fine," Linda said, smoothing her skirt. but you're signing the override." "Done," Auden said, scribbling his initials on the digital pad. "Make it quick. We miss our slot in 15 minutes." Linda walked into the cabin. The soft jazz music was playing. The mood lighting was set to a calming purple. She approached seat 1A. Solomon was deep in REM sleep. He was dreaming of code, of flowing rivers of data. "Sir," Linda said, tapping him on the shoulder. Solomon didn't stir. She tapped harder. "Mr. Bishop." Solomon's eyes snapped open. For a second, he was disoriented. He looked up at the woman looming over him. "Yes," he croaked, his voice thick with sleep. "I need you to gather your things." "Mr. Bishop," Linda said, her voice projecting that fake customer service sweetness that usually signals a nightmare. "Unfortunately, there has been an error with your booking. We need to reaccommodate you on a flight tomorrow morning." Solomon blinked. Sitting up slowly, he rubbed his face. "Excuse me, I have a ticket. I'm seated. The plane is about to leave." "Yes, and that is why we need to hurry," Linda said, gesturing to the aisle. "We have overbooked the first-class cabin due to a seating malfunction in the rear that requires crew rest reallocation. As the last passenger to book, unfortunately, you are the one who must be bumped." Solomon looked at her. His brain was waking up, processing the logic. "That's a lie," he said calmly. "Crew rest seats are 1K and 2K on this configuration. I'm in 1A, and I didn't book last. I booked on a titanium priority override." Linda stiffened. He knew the plane configuration. "Sir, I am not going to argue logistics with you. This is an operational necessity. We have issued a voucher for $3,000 and a hotel stay for tonight. Please, grab your bag." "No," Solomon said. He reached for his water, took a sip, and pressed the recline button. "I have a meeting in Zurich at 9 a.m. I am not getting off this plane." Linda blocked the sensor, stopping the seat from reclining. "Sir, if you do not comply, I will be forced to call Port Authority police." Solomon stopped. He looked at Linda. Really looked at her. He saw the fear behind the aggression. He saw the pressure. But he also saw the disrespect. "Call them," Solomon said softly. "But before you do, you might want to check who you're talking to." "I know who I'm talking to," Linda sneered, her mask slipping. "I'm talking to a passenger who is delaying this flight. I'm talking to a man who thinks a ticket gives him the right to hold up 300 people." She turned on her heel and marched back to the galley. Auden was waiting. "Well?" "He refused," Linda said. "He's being difficult." Auden's face turned a shade of plum. "Difficult in my airport. Get security. Now, get the officers on board. Tell them we have a belligerent passenger who is refusing crew instructions and acting erratically. Use the word erratic. It speeds them up." "Is that true?" Sarah, the younger flight attendant, interjected, looking terrified. "He was just sleeping. He asked for water." "Quiet." "Sarah," Linda snapped. "Go prepare the galley." 2 minutes later, 3 officers from the Port Authority Police Department boarded the plane. They were big men, tired of dealing with drunks and unruly tourists. They saw a black man in a hoodie refusing to leave a first-class seat. The narrative wrote itself in their heads before a word was spoken. Auden stood behind them, pointing a shaking finger. "That's him. 1A. He's refusing to deplane. He's been aggressive with my staff." The lead officer, a man named Sergeant Miller, walked up to the suite. "Sir, let's go," Miller said, his hand resting on his belt. "Don't make this a scene." Solomon looked at the officer. He remained seated. He remained calm. He pulled out his phone. He didn't start recording. He sent a single text message. Destination Zurich. Status compromised. Asset AeroVantage. Execute Protocol Black Rain. He locked the phone and placed it in his pocket. "Officer," Solomon said, his voice steady. "I have broken no laws. I have a valid ticket. I have not raised my voice. This is a civil dispute over a contract of carriage. You have no jurisdiction to remove me unless I am a threat to the safety of the flight. The captain wants you off?" Miller barked. "That makes you a trespasser. Now, you can walk off, or we can drag you off." "I suggest you check the manifest again," Solomon said. "And I suggest you ask Mr. Clark over there if his cousin Chadwick is worth the GDP of a small country." Auden gasped. How did he know about Chadwick? Enough talk, Miller said. He lunged forward. The next few seconds were a blur of violence and confusion. Miller grabbed Solomon's arm. Solomon didn't fight back, but he went deadweight. He was a big man, heavy with muscle under the baggy clothes. Miller couldn't lift him alone. "Grab his legs," Miller shouted. The other two officers swarmed in. One grabbed Solomon's ankles. The other grabbed his left arm. They yanked him from the leather seat. Ideally, it would have been a clean extraction. It wasn't. Solomon's face hit the armrest of seat 1B. Blood sprayed from his nose, splattering across the pristine white antimacassar. His glasses flew off, skittering down the aisle. "Stop, you're hurting him," Sarah screamed from the galley, dropping a pot of coffee. Passengers in the cabin gasped. Phones were already out. Flash, record, upload. They dragged Solomon down the aisle of the 787. His hoodie was torn. His face was bleeding. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just stared at Auden Clark as he was hauled past the galley. His eyes were cold, dead, and terrifyingly lucid. They dragged him onto the jet bridge and threw him onto the dirty carpet. "You're banned from AeroVantage," Auden yelled after him, his voice cracking with adrenaline. "Don't you ever come back." Solomon lay on the floor for a moment, spitting blood onto the carpet. He reached into his pocket, checking his phone. It was cracked, but functional. Chadwick Clark walked past him, stepping over Solomon's legs with a look of distaste, holding his vlogging camera. "Whoa, guys, looks like some drama at the gate. Crazy start to the trip." Chadwick boarded. The doors closed. The jet bridge retracted. Solomon Bishop stood up. He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. He picked up his broken glasses. He didn't go to the police station. He didn't go to the hospital. He walked back into the terminal, found a quiet corner in the main concourse, and opened his laptop. It was 8:45 p.m. The markets in Tokyo would open in 3 hours. The markets in London would open in 8. Solomon cracked his knuckles. "Okay, Auden," he whispered. "Let's see how much that seat really cost." At 35,000 feet, the air in the first-class cabin of Flight 909 was pressurized to a comfortable 6,000 feet equivalent, scented with hints of lavender and warmed citrus. Chadwick Clark sat in seat 1A, the throne he had usurped. He stretched his legs out, the expensive Italian loafers resting on the ottoman. He felt good. He felt powerful. He had no idea that the damp spot on the leather armrest, which he had just absently wiped away with a hot towel, was the blood of the man who effectively owned the digital infrastructure of the plane he was flying in. "Champagne, Mr. Clark?" Sarah asked. Her voice was trembling. She was the flight attendant who had dropped the coffee pot earlier. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She had spent the last 20 minutes crying in the galley, trying to scrub a smear of red off the carpet before Chadwick boarded. "Yeah, keep it coming," Chadwick said, not looking up from his phone. He was editing a photo of himself looking out the window, the clouds reflecting in his designer sunglasses. He added a filter to make his skin look tanner. He typed the caption, "Grind never stops. Zurich for the Global Summit. Levels. Hashtag CEO Life. Hashtag Future Billionaire. Hashtag Blessed." He hit post. Across the aisle in seat 1D sat a man named Leo Gentry. Leo was 26, wore a hoodie that looked similar to Solomon's, and had made his first $10 million mining cryptocurrency before he could legally drink. He wasn't a titanium VIP like Solomon. He was just rich, quiet, and extremely observant. Leo hadn't said a word during the dragging. He hadn't screamed. He had simply held his iPhone 15 Pro at chest level, the lens steady, recording in 4K resolution at 60 frames per second. He had captured everything. The sneer on Auden's face, the way Sergeant Miller's knee had driven into Solomon's kidney, the sickening crack of Solomon's face hitting the armrest. And most damning of all, he had captured Auden's scream, "I don't care if he has a ticket. Get him off so Chadwick can sit down." Leo looked at Chadwick, who was now sipping champagne and smirking at his phone screen. Then Leo looked down at his own laptop. He had the video file open in Final Cut Pro. He didn't add music. He didn't add a voiceover. The raw audio was horrifying enough. He verified the identity of the victim. It wasn't hard. Leo read Wired magazine. He read the Financial Times. He knew the face of Solomon Bishop. Solomon was a legend in the back-end developer community, the ghost of Silicon Valley. He was the man who wrote the Bishop Protocol, the foundational code that secured 80% of global airline reservation systems against cyber attacks. "You have no idea what you just did," Leo whispered to himself. He opened Twitter X. He opened Reddit. He opened TikTok. He titled the video "AeroVantage Station Manager Assaults Solomon Bishop to Steal Seat for CEO's Son, Flight 909. He hit upload. Back on the ground. The rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning. Solomon sat in a quiet corner of the Blue Horizon Jazz Bar in Terminal 4. It was a public spot, far removed from the exclusivity of the Obsidian Lounge. He ordered a double espresso and a glass of water. His lip had stopped bleeding, but his cheek was swelling, turning a dark, angry purple. His ribs ached every time he took a breath. He opened his laptop. The screen glowed, illuminating his battered face. He didn't log into a bank account. He logged into a secure server located in a bunker in Geneva. The interface was stark, black text on a white background. System Bishop Dynamics Global Licensing Mainframe. User S. Bishop Root Access. Authentication Retina Scan. Verified. Solomon navigated to the Active Contracts tab. He scrolled past banks, government agencies, and hospital networks until he found it. Client AeroVantage Holdings. Service Global Reservation and Logistics Cloud, GRLC. Status active. License expiry auto-renew. 2030. Dependency level critical 100% of fleet operations. Solomon stared at the screen. He remembered signing this contract 5 years ago with Robert Clark. Robert had been charming then, desperate for the tech that would save his failing airline. Solomon had given him a friendship rate. He had saved the company. Solomon pulled up the contract terms. He scrolled to Section 14, B, the Morality and Conduct Clause. Bishop Dynamics reserves the right to immediately suspend or terminate all services if the client, or any senior executive or family member thereof, engages in conduct that brings physical harm, disrepute, or gross negligence toward a representative of Bishop Dynamics. It was a standard clause, usually meant to protect engineers from being harassed by angry managers. It was never meant for this, but it applied. Oh, it applied perfectly. Solomon picked up his phone. He dialed a number that very few people possessed. "This is Gideon," a voice answered on the first ring. Gideon was not just a lawyer, he was a shark who had eaten all the other sharks. "It's Solomon," he said. His voice was raspy. "Solomon, you sound like you gargled gravel. You okay? You're supposed to be in the air. I was assaulted. Gideon, dragged off flight 909, assault and battery, false imprisonment, defamation." There was a silence on the line, a dangerous, loaded silence. "Who?" "AeroVantage, Auden Clark." He wanted my seat for his cousin Chadwick. Chadwick Clark. Gideon let out a low whistle. "The influencer kid, Solomon. Please tell me you're joking." "I wish. I'm at JFK. I want you to draft a press release. I want you to file a lawsuit in the Southern District of New York. And I want you to prepare the short." "The short?" Gideon asked. "Solomon, if you short the stock and then sue them, the SEC will be all over us." "I'm not shorting them." Solomon said cold, "I'm divesting. I want to sell my entire position in AeroVantage, all 8%. Tonight the markets are closed. Dark pools," Solomon said. "Find a buyer. Dump it. I don't care about the price. Just get me out." And Gideon, "Yeah, draft a termination of service, notice for the GRLC software, effective immediately." Gideon gasped. "Solomon, if you kill the GRLC, their planes can't take off. Their ticketing system goes dark. You'll strand 100,000 people. The liability." "I'm not turning it off," Solomon said, his eyes narrowing, as he watched a replay of his own assault on a nearby TV screen. Leo's video had just hit the news. "I'm putting it in maintenance mode. Just a little glitch. A glitch that requires the primary license holder to biometric scan to unlock. And since I'm the primary license holder, and you're currently incapacitated due to injury." Gideon finished the sentence, his voice filling with professional glee. "Brilliant. It's not sabotage, it's a security protocol triggered by the assault on the administrator." "Exactly," Solomon said. "Let them fly the planes manually. Let them write tickets with pen and paper. I want Robert Clark to understand what it feels like to be helpless." Solomon hit enter on his keyboard. On the screen, the status next to AeroVantage changed from active to suspended, security lockdown. Robert Clark slept in a bed that cost $40,000, in a house in the Hamptons that cost $20 million. He was dreaming of his quarterly bonus. He woke up to the sound of his phone ringing. It wasn't the soft chime of a text. It was the red phone, the emergency line reserved for crash landings and terrorist threats. He fumbled for the device, knocking a glass of water onto the nightstand. "What?" he barked, his heart hammering. "What crashed?" "Nothing crashed, sir. Yet." It was his vice president of public relations, a woman named Catherine, and she sounded like she was hyperventilating. "Have you seen the internet?" "It's 5:00 a.m. "Catherine, no, I haven't seen the internet." "Sir, you need to turn on the TV. Now. CNN, Fox, BBC. It's everywhere." Robert grabbed the remote and clicked on the television, mounted on the opposite wall. The screen was filled with a shaky, vertical video. He saw the interior of one of his flagship 787s. He saw 3 policemen mauling a passenger. He saw the blood. He heard the scream. "Get him off so Chadwick can sit down." Robert went cold. He recognized the voice. It was his nephew, Auden. "Oh God," Robert whispered. "Auden, you moron." Then, the news anchor's voice cut through the room. Viral video has sparked global outrage. The passenger, violently removed from AeroVantage flight 909, has been identified by tech sources as Solomon Bishop, the reclusive billionaire founder of Bishop Dynamics. Bishop, a key strategic partner of the airline, was reportedly traveling to Zurich for a banking summit. AeroVantage stock is currently plummeting in pre-market trading in London and Frankfurt. Robert dropped the phone. Solomon Bishop, the man who held the keys to the castle. Robert scrambled out of bed, tripping over his sheets. He ran to his home office. He had to call Solomon. He had to apologize. He had to offer him a private jet, $1 million, an island, anything. He dialed Solomon's personal cell. "The number you have reached is not accepting calls from this carrier." He dialed Auden. Auden answered on the first ring. He sounded drunk, or maybe just in shock. "Uncle Rob, I can explain. The guy looked like a bum." He was wearing a hoodie. "You are fired," Robert said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "You are fired. Auden, don't go to the office. Don't go to the airport. If you step foot on AeroVantage property, I will have you arrested for trespassing. But Chadwick needed the seat. Chadwick is currently flying over the Atlantic in a stolen seat, while the man you assaulted is dismantling my company." Robert screamed, slamming the phone down. He logged into his Bloomberg terminal. The screen was a sea of red. AeroVantage ticker, AVA, had closed yesterday at $42.50. Pre-market price, $28.10. A 33% drop. $4 billion of market capitalization, evaporated in 3 hours. But that wasn't the worst part. His desktop computer pinged, a system alert, then another, then a cascade of them. Critical failure reservation system. Critical failure. Crew scheduling. Critical failure. Load balance calculator. Robert tried to open his email. A pop-up window appeared on the screen. It was a black box with the Bishop Dynamics logo, a stylized chess piece. Access denied. Reason license suspended under morality. Clause 14.b. Administrator status unavailable. Robert stared at the screen. The silence in the house was heavy, suffocating. His landline rang. It was the Chief Operations Officer. "Robert," the COO shouted, panic stripping away all protocol. "We can't check anyone in. The kiosks are dead. The app is dead. The website just says 403 forbidden. Tokyo just called they can't generate a flight plan because the load balance software is locked out. We have 60 planes on the tarmac in Asia that can't move." "Switch to the backup system," Robert said, gripping the edge of his mahogany desk until his knuckles turned white. "The backup system is also Bishop Dynamics. It's all him, Robert. We outsourced everything to him in 2021 to cut costs. Remember." Robert remembered. He remembered the bonus he got for that decision. "Call him," Robert said. "Call his lawyer." We did. His lawyer. Gideon Vance. No. Wait. Gideon something. His lawyer just served us with a lawsuit. They're suing for $50 million in damages. But that's not the killer. They filed an injunction to freeze the software pending a security audit due to the assault on their CEO. How long will the audit take? Weeks, maybe months. "We don't have days," Robert whispered. "If we don't fly by noon, we're insolvent." Robert looked at the TV again. The news had shifted from the video to a live shot of JFK Terminal 4. It was chaos. Thousands of passengers were stranded. The lines stretched out the doors. People were screaming at gate agents. And in the middle of the screen, a reporter was interviewing a man sitting calmly on a bench, holding an ice pack to his face. It was Solomon. "Mr. Bishop," the reporter yelled, thrusting a microphone into his face. "Do you have a comment on the situation? AeroVantage claims this was a misunderstanding." Solomon looked directly into the camera. His left eye was swollen shut. His lip was split. But his good eye bored straight through the lens and into Robert Clark's soul. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Solomon said, his voice rough but clear. "It was a business decision. They decided that my ticket was worth less than their nepotism. They broke the contract." He paused, and a small, dangerous smile touched his lips. "So, I broke mine." Robert watched as Solomon stood up, dusted off his dirty jeans, and walked away from the camera, disappearing into the crowd. Robert sank into his chair. He looked at the family photo on his desk. Him, his wife, and his son. Chadwick. Chadwick was landing in Zurich in 2 hours. He had no idea that when he stepped off that plane, he wouldn't be a VIP anymore. He would be the most hated man on the planet, stepping into a world where his credit cards no longer worked. Robert picked up the phone again. He dialed his personal broker. "Sell," Robert croaked. "Sir, you can't sell. It's insider trading if you sell now during a crisis." "I don't care about jail," Robert screamed. "If I don't liquidate now, I'll be bankrupt by lunch. Sell everything." But deep down, he knew it was already too late. The black rain had begun to fall, and it wouldn't stop until it washed AeroVantage into the gutter. The wheels of the Boeing 787 kissed the tarmac at Zurich Airport with a gentle screech, a stark contrast to the screeching halt of the company's stock price 4,000 miles away. Chadwick Clark unbuckled his seatbelt. He felt refreshed. He had slept for 6 hours, eaten a lobster thermidor that had been loaded specifically for him, and watched 3 action movies. He had no idea that the world he knew had incinerated while he was in the air. He grabbed his carry-on, a limited edition Louis Vuitton duffel, and waited for the door to open. He expected the usual reception, a Porsche Cayenne waiting on the tarmac to whisk him to the VIP terminal. Bypassing the commoners at immigration, the cabin door opened. The cool Swiss air rushed in, instead of a smiling concierge holding a placard with his name. 2 Swiss federal police officers stood at the threshold. Behind them was the frantic station manager for Zurich, a woman named Frau Weber, who looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 hours. "Mr. Clark?" one of the officers asked. "That's me." Chadwick smiled, adjusting his sunglasses. "I assume the car is downstairs. I'm running a bit tight for the hotel check-in." "There is no car, sir," the officer said, his face a mask of professional indifference. "We need to see your passport." Chadwick frowned. "I'm VIP. I don't do the line." "This is not a line, sir. This is a detention check. Please step out of the aircraft." Chadwick stepped onto the jet bridge. He pulled out his phone to record this outrage for his followers. "Swiss police, harassing me, unbelievable discrimination," he thought, framing the caption. He turned off airplane mode. His phone didn't just ping, it vibrated so violently it nearly fell out of his hand. It wasn't a few notifications. It was a digital avalanche. 15,000 new comments on Instagram, 40,000 mentions on X, 500 missed calls. He tapped on the first notification. It was a comment on his selfie from earlier. "Hope you enjoyed the champagne. You thief. It cost your dad $4 billion. He tapped the next one. A video link. He clicked it. He saw himself walking over Solomon Bishop's bleeding body. He heard his own voice. Crazy start to the trip. "Oh," Chadwick whispered. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure melting in the sun. "Passport," the officer repeated. Chadwick handed it over with a trembling hand. The officer scanned it. "Mr. Clark, we have been informed by AeroVantage Corporate Security that your return ticket has been voided. Additionally, the credit card used to book your hotel, the corporate Amex, has been reported as compromised and deactivated by the issuer." "What, that's my dad's company. You can't cancel my ticket." "We didn't," Frau Weber interjected, her voice dripping with disdain. "The system did, when Mr. Bishop suspended the GRLC license. The failsafe protocol automatically purged all non-revenue positive tickets to clear bandwidth for paying customers. Since your ticket was a zero-cost nepotism override, the system deleted you." "Deleted me," Chadwick shrieked. "I'm a person, you can't delete a person. To the algorithm, you are just a line of code that didn't pay," Frau Weber said, feeling a grim satisfaction. "You have no valid return ticket. Do you have proof of funds to purchase a new one?" A one-way ticket to New York on a partner airline is currently 4,000 francs. "I have money," Chadwick scoffed. He pulled out his personal black card. He handed it to the ticket agent standing nearby. The agent swiped it. Declined. "Try it again," Chadwick snapped. "Declined, sir. Issuer referral. That usually means the account is frozen." Chadwick tried his debit card. Declined. He tried his crypto wallet. Locked. He realized then that the text messages from his father weren't just angry rants. He scrolled down to the last one from Robert Clark. "They froze my assets. Chadwick. The SEC. The DOJ. They think I was liquidating to flee. They froze everything. You're on your own." Chadwick looked up. Passengers from the flight were filing past him. Some recognized him from the video. "That's him!" a woman whispered, loud enough for him to hear. "That's the little brat." "Shame on you!" a man shouted. Chadwick backed away. I need to go to the lounge." "Access denied," Frau Weber said, crossing her arms. "Lounge access is for ticketed passengers only. You are currently a vagrant in the transit zone." Chadwick Clark, the boy who had never carried his own luggage, sank onto a hard plastic chair near the gate. He was 4,000 miles from home, penniless, and hated by the entire internet. He opened his phone again. He started a live stream. He needed sympathy. He needed his fans to save him. "Guys," he sobbed into the camera, tears streaming down his face. "I'm stranded in Switzerland. They took everything. I didn't know who he was. Please, someone send help." The comments rolled in instantly. User_77. Karma is a flight deviation. User_Leo Gentry. Enjoy the layover. Chad, it's going to be a long one. The boardroom of AeroVantage in Manhattan was a soundproof glass box suspended 40 floors above the city. Usually, it was a place of quiet power. Today, it smelled of stale coffee, nervous sweat, and impending doom. Robert Clark sat at the head of the table. He looked like a man who had gone 12 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. His tie was undone. His eyes were bloodshot. Around him sat the board of directors, 12 men and women who cared about nothing but the share price. And the share price was currently $14.20. They had lost 60% of their value in 12 hours. "The fleet is grounded," the COO reported, his voice hollow. "We have planes in London, Tokyo, Dubai, and Los Angeles. None of them can take off. The pilots can't access the load sheets. The mechanics can't access the maintenance logs. Bishop Dynamics locked us out of everything. We are bleeding $10 million an hour." "Can we hack it?" a board member asked. "Can we bypass his code? Hack Bishop's code?" The CTO laughed, a dry, hysterical sound. "You might as well try to hack the Pentagon with a toaster. Solomon Bishop wrote the encryption keys himself. It's a 512-bit rolling cipher. It would take a supercomputer 1,000 years to break it." Or, "We need his thumbprint." "Where is he?" Robert asked, his voice barely a whisper. "He's in a hotel in Queens," the general counsel said. "He refused to go to the hospital. He's sitting in a Holiday Inn Express. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" The double doors of the boardroom swung open. They didn't slam. They just opened smoothly. A man walked in. It wasn't Solomon. It was a man in a bespoke suit that cost more than Robert's car. He carried a single briefcase. "Gideon," Robert said, recognizing the shark. Gideon Vance smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a coroner who enjoyed his work. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," Gideon said, placing the briefcase on the table. "I represent Solomon Bishop and Bishop Dynamics." "Get the hell out!" a board member shouted. "We're suing you for extortion." "You can try," Gideon said calmly. "But by the time the court hears the motion, AeroVantage will be Chapter 7. You won't just be bankrupt, you'll be liquidated. The planes will be sold for scrap, the pensions will be gone, and you," he pointed at the board members, "you will all be named in the shareholder class action lawsuit for gross negligence." The room went silent. "What does he want?" Robert asked. "Money I'll give him. 10 million. 20. Money." Gideon chuckled. "Mr. Clark, Solomon Bishop made $300 million this morning by shorting your competitors who also use his software. Knowing their stock would rise as yours fell, he doesn't need your money." "Then what?" Gideon opened the briefcase. He slid a single document across the mahogany table. It wasn't thick. It was 1 page. "The terms of reactivation," Gideon said. Robert picked it up. His hand shook so hard the paper rattled. He read the 3 bullet points. 1. Immediate resignation. Robert Clark and Auden Clark must resign from all executive positions, effective immediately. They will forfeit all severance packages and stock options. 2. The Admission AeroVantage will issue a public statement written by Solomon Bishop, admitting to the systemic culture of nepotism and entitlement that led to the assault. This statement will be read live on air by the outgoing CEO. 3. The divestment. The Clark Family Trust will sell its controlling interest in AeroVantage to a buyer of Bishop Dynamics choosing at the current market rate $14.20, cementing a loss of over $3 billion compared to yesterday's valuation. Robert looked up. This is suicide. You want me to sell at the bottom. You want to strip me of everything." "Not everything," Gideon said softly. "You keep your house in the Hamptons. Assuming the DOJ doesn't seize it for the fraud investigation we just triggered regarding your emergency stock sale attempt this morning." Robert went pale. "You know about that. Solomon sees everything." Robert. He saw the sell order hit the dark pool. "He flagged it to the SEC before your broker even clicked confirm." Gideon leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. "Here is the choice. Robert, sign the paper. and the software turns back on in 5 minutes. The planes fly. The company survives. The employees keep their jobs. You leave with your freedom, if not your dignity. Or. Gideon's eyes hardened. You refuse. The software stays off. The airline collapses by Friday, and Solomon personally funds the legal team that will prosecute Auden for felony assault and you for corporate malfeasance. He will spend every dime he has to ensure you die in a federal prison cell. Robert looked at the board members. They were looking back at him. There was no loyalty in their eyes, only survival. "Sign it, Robert," the chairman of the board said quietly. "Sign it, or we vote to remove you anyway." Robert Clark felt the tears prick his eyes. He thought of his grandfather, who started the airline with one crop duster. He thought of the empire he was supposed to hand to Chadwick. He picked up a pen. Does Auden have to go to jail?" Robert asked, a last, pathetic plea. "Auden broke a man's face because he wanted a chair," Gideon said. "Auden is going to Rikers. That isn't negotiable." Robert closed his eyes. He signed the document. Gideon snatched the paper away before the ink was dry. He pulled out his phone and tapped a single button. Status reactivation authorized. Suddenly, the screens on the wall flickered. The red warnings turned green. System online. Reservation server active. Flight plans generating. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, followed immediately by the sound of 12 board members standing up and turning their backs on Robert. "Mr. Clark," the chairman said, "security is waiting to escort you out of the building. Please leave your badge on the table." Robert stood up. He walked to the window. He looked down at the city. He was a king yesterday. Today, he was a ghost. He walked out of the room, past Gideon, who didn't even look at him. Gideon was already on the phone. "It's done. Solomon, the king is dead." 6 months later, the courtroom in Queens was packed. It wasn't a high-profile murder trial, but the airline assault case had captivated the nation. It was a story of rich versus poor, David versus Goliath, karma versus entitlement. Auden Clark sat at the defense table. He looked smaller than he had in the video. The expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds. His face was pale, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Across the aisle, Solomon Bishop sat in the front row. He wasn't at the plaintiff's table. The district attorney was handling the criminal case. Solomon was just a witness. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans. The bruising on his face had healed, but a faint, thin scar ran through his left eyebrow, a permanent reminder of the armrest. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Justice Vance. No relation to Gideon, though she shared his steely demeanor, looked down at Auden. "Mr. Clark," she said, "you have pleaded guilty to 1 count of assault in the 2nd degree and 1 count of unlawful imprisonment. Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Auden stood up. His hands were shaking. I was under a lot of pressure, Your Honor. The flight was full. My cousin, I just wanted to help my family. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. It was the wrong thing to say. Justice Vance took off her glasses. "You didn't mean to hurt anyone, Mr. Clark. I have watched the video. You ordered police officers to treat a paying customer like a terrorist because he inconvenienced your seating chart. You treated a human being like cargo." She looked at Solomon. "Mr. Bishop." She nodded. "The victim has requested not to speak today, but his presence speaks loudly enough. She turned back to Auden. "We live in a society where wealth often acts as a shield," Justice Vance said. "But not in this courtroom. Not today. Auden Clark, I sentence you to 3 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You are remanded immediately." Auden's knees buckled. A wail went up from the back of the room. His mother. The bailiffs moved in, clicking the handcuffs onto his wrists. The sound was sharp and final. As they led Auden away, he looked at Solomon. He expected to see a gloating smile. He expected to see triumph, but Solomon just watched him with a blank, indifferent expression. To Solomon, Auden wasn't an enemy anymore. He was just a bug that had been patched out of the system. Outside the courthouse, the press was waiting. "Solomon, Solomon," they shouted. "How do you feel is justice served?" Solomon stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Gideon stood beside him, looking satisfied. "Justice is a process," Solomon said into the microphones. "Auden is going to prison. Robert lost his company. But the real work is just starting." "What work?" a reporter asked. Solomon smiled. "Bishop Dynamics has acquired a controlling stake in a new venture. We bought the assets of a defunct airline. We're launching a new carrier next year." "What's it called?" "Fair Air," Solomon said. "No first class, no economy. Just one class. Everyone gets legroom. Everyone gets a meal. And nobody gets dragged out of their seat." He put on his sunglasses. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch. I'm finally going to Zurich." In the transit lounge of Zurich Airport, a young man sat near the charging station. He was wearing a dirty designer hoodie and looking at a smartphone with a cracked screen. Chadwick Clark had been stuck in Europe for months. His father's assets were frozen. His own accounts were empty. He was surviving on handouts from the few followers who still pitied him, couch surfing in hostels and trying to avoid deportation. He saw the news on a nearby TV. He saw Solomon Bishop announcing the new airline. He saw his cousin Auden in handcuffs. Chadwick looked down at his phone. He opened TikTok. He had lost 2 million followers. His verified checkmark was gone. He hit record. "Hey guys," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Update on the situation. I'm applying for a job today. Dishwasher at a cafe. It's a start. Stay humble." He posted the video. It got 3 likes. One of them was from Solomon Bishop. Solomon Bishop didn't just sue an airline, he deleted it. He proved that no matter how much money or power you have, you never know who you're messing with in Seat 1A. Auden Clark lost his freedom. Robert lost his empire. And Chadwick lost his delusions of grandeur. It was the most expensive flight in history, and none of them even left the ground. If you enjoyed this story of karma and digital revenge, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if they tried to drag you off a plane? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.